Yes, yes. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Grand rising. Keeping it positive, keeping it informational, keeping it inspirational. Today, I'm going to reflect on the life and times of Malcolm X. His birthday's coming up. Be 100 years old, man. Wow. I saw a book review and come across the Washington Post that was saying that Malcolm X's legacy is important, more important now than ever. And so I wanted to take this opportunity today to reflect on the life and legacy of Brother Malcolm and also tell you about some great, great advocacies that are coming across Southern California. They've been at it for a long time, but now it's coming to fruition to honor the name and legacy of Brother Malcolm X. Joining me this morning is, I don't have another word to exceed icons. I'm going to call him a cultural icon here, Los Angeles area, Lamert Park centered. He's a singer, he's a performer, he's an advocate for the arts, he's an advocate for culture without a question. Torrence Brannon-Reece, good morning. I think I got you. Where you at? There you are.
Right.
Good morning, my brother.
Yeah, it's like, where am I? How you doing, brother?
Doing all right, man. Just, one day at a time and, keeping conscious and awake and healthy in these crazy times that we're in. Are you doing okay?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I can't complain about anything, Yeah, I'm blessed to be able to do what I feel like I was born to do. I think that's important.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, man. Before we get into the meat of the matter, I mean, what is your driving force in your soul to do the work that you do? Because I've seen you out on the front lines all these years and centered in culture, centered in consciousness. What's the engine that drives Brother Torrey?
I feel a sense of responsibility, man. I really feel the spirits of our ancestors in my soul. And I feel that it's only right of me to continue to build on their work, and so Du Bois and Garvey and Paul Robeson and Baldwin and Malcolm and all of those spirits are alive as far as I'm concerned. And so I feel like they're always looking at me and like, okay, what you gonna do now?
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
I don't see them as gone. I see them as here, like kind of looking at us like, okay. And that's real for me, man. I don't know how else to explain it. And so it just drives me to do what the spirit has led me to do. Yeah, I feel I have a calling, for lack of a better term, an assignment. Right. Right. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. I agree. I think our consciousness is definitely the ancestors are listening and watching, and I do believe deeply that they are driving us as we move forward to empower and inform our community. Now, I know you have an organization that has always been celebrating the life and legacy of Brother Malcolm X. And, now we're coming up on his 100th birthday. And people in these strenuous times that we're in are beginning to really, really hear his voice, even though he's been gone from among us for so many years. But now his voice is still resonating among us and even more amplified in this crazy, crazy time. Tell us a little bit about your organization and what you have been advocating for in Los Angeles in memory of Malcolm X.
Well, the organization Family Fighters for African and Mental Liberation International, and now Foundation for Arts, Mentoring, Leadership, and Innovation, Family, has been around since 1992. And so that's what, 33 years. Can't believe it, but it's
Wow.
33 years. Yeah. I was like 2 years old. No.
Ah.
But, we started out working in the gang truce movement. That was part of what we did. We really started out at Southwest College in terms of our first programs. We were just there to do programs for the students. I graduated from Southwest Community College back in those days. And I felt that, we should do something to help the students there. And we did everything from cook for them, man, to that's where I met Maxine Waters, who helped start my nonprofit back in those days. And so we have youth programs that we're very proud of. See a Man, Be a Man, and Princess to Queen, or what I call life mastery programs. I wrote a curriculum called The Root, DA, which is a take on my New Orleans culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
We use a hard D.
Yeah.
Instead of the, it's D, duh. But at any rate, the Root curriculum is a 9-theme curriculum called Critical Life Themes. It goes from spirituality to culture to education, economics, family, politics, health, etc. But at the end, it's personal responsibility. So my mother was a young lady, and still is around. She's still alive. Was a young lady who raised 4 boys by herself. And so the programs that I developed came out of that. Part of it came out of that experience of being raised by a single mother, not knowing who my father was, longing for that relationship, longing for that kind of love and attention, and sometimes finding it in the wrong places, right? And so I knew that I needed to create something that I could kind of parent with not parent, but a parent, what a good parent should be, right? Being there consistently, being concerned, being helpful, guiding, listening, and all of that kind of thing. And so my programs I'm very proud of, and they produce very, very beautiful, solid results in terms of young folks. Then we have the Malcolm X Legacy Project that started back in '92 at Marcus Garvey School. You might remember Dr. Onion Palmer.
Yes.
Right. So Dr. Palmer was there at the time, and the first program I did was at his Marcus Garvey School. And Mary Kara, Erica Bird's late husband, who will be with us this year from Caras Unity Center. She'll be with us on the 17th. Her husband officiated the first event that I ever did. And then '93, we started the Malcolm X Festival. And we've been celebrating Malcolm ever since '92. I would say, without sounding arrogant, but truthful and honest, that our organization is most responsible for preserving the legacy of Malcolm X in the city of Los Angeles in the last 33 years.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
I watched you for many years, for many of those 32, 33 years, and
Yes,
I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
now,
yeah.
I started back then talking about, we don't need Crenshaw Boulevard. We don't need Crenshaw Boulevard. Let's make Crenshaw Malcolm X, And I used to just get up on, the poles, the street poles, and people would hoist me up, and we would put up a sign that we would make of Malcolm X Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
And I have those photos and stuff. I wish I would have gave them to you, but
Yeah.
that was the start of the vision of it, and I would talk about it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and people join with me, man. That I have to give credit to, and we never gave up. We never gave up, and finally, we now have Malcolm X, in honor of Malcolm X, street signs up, codifying Malcolm X corridor for a 5-mile stretch on Crenshaw from the 10 freeway all the way to Florence, border of Englewood, and I'm very honored that you have agreed to give a few words that morning on the 17th. Thank you for that. Your voice has always been powerful. Your voice has always been important. You're a voice that so many of us follow. And so I'm honored to have you as a part of that historic morning program.
Oh man, what an honor to accept your invitation. I mean, this is really, 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 really something. And I want to kind of touch something there. Names are important. I've been really thinking about this a lot over the last couple of years, especially since I've amplified my being in the space of arts and culture. And when we look at the names of streets, the names of schools and buildings and everything, oftentimes we take for granted the ramifications of the name. I've recently was up in Sacramento in the state capitol And, inside of the state capitol building, they have the portraits of all the governors of California. And Peter Burnett being the first governor, people don't realize he was a vicious racist, a slaveholder, the whole nine. And so the woman that was giving the tour, she literally said, "We don't like him," because he has this. But when you look at people like him, and then you see what their legacy was and how they were in their day, but yet here to this day, we honor them with names, on schools, on streets, and everything like that. I think it's important for us to recognize that history. One name that I will call out is Jordan, David Jordan. So you have Jordan Downs, Jordan High Schools. There's Jordan High Schools everywhere. Jordan Park, Jordan this, Jordan that. And so who was David Starr Jordan, after whom these institutions were named? David Starr Jordan was the first president of Stanford University. Well, what did he do? In his day, he was the most profound writer, analyst in the area of eugenics, which said that they were going to engineer, birth to reduce the population of the Negro in the country. And he was that guy. His papers actually were used to formulate the philosophies of, Nazi Germany, and thus and so it just goes on and on and on. And so this is what I'm saying is oftentimes we see across our community the names of streets and buildings and edifices, and not really being up on the history of those names. Tell us a little bit about how Crenshaw Boulevard, who is that named after, and what is his or her legacy?
Well, it was a him. His name was George Lafayette Crenshaw, and he was born in the 1890s, I believe. And he was a wealthy property owner, real estate developer, I should say. And he adhered to restrictive covenants, upholding the standards of the day that dictated that Black folk not live anywhere near him or anyone that he valued. And so this community was not for us. That street that is called Crenshaw, he named after himself. He was just grabbing land and stuff like that. And so, I don't get angry at my brothers and sisters for not knowing what they don't know. But once we know, once we come into knowledge of something, then we should act accordingly. And I have this T-shirt on, for example, of a man who, when he was born, was called Cassius Clay. But when he came into a political consciousness, a cultural consciousness, he said, "I can no longer use that name. My conscience won't allow me to use that name." And so he became Muhammad Ali, of course, with the assistance of the man whom we're honoring. He was inspired and he was educated by Minister Malcolm X, who was also El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz and Omar Wali. And so names are critical. And when a white man, a European, goes to Africa, the first thing they do is name Lake Victoria. They take and put their names everywhere, right? And, again, if we don't know, that's one thing. But once we know, like you just told me something about Jordan High School, I didn't know. I mean, I did not know that, right? I just became educated. Now I can tell others that Jordan High, although we're proud of, we went there. I know we could only go to 2 schools back in the day. Here in LA, we were relegated to the east side of the city, sure. And so we didn't know, right? And then there's Locke High School, where I taught for many years, which is named after Elaine Leroy Locke, the architect, one of the architects of the Harlem Renaissance. But the kids don't know. They don't even teach the good history. And so it's critically important that we, as Malcolm said, speak for ourselves, listen for ourselves, act for ourselves, etc. And so names are critical. It's one of the first things that the European colonizers did, was take our names, and name us after them, which is atrocious, right? But even though we wear those names, we can have the consciousness to say we reject the history that gave us those names. We reject the act that gave us those names. And so I think, at least having Malcolm X on that boulevard will give some kind of signal that something is going on that we need to pay attention to. And the young folks coming up today have an opportunity to become educated about the past so that they don't just walk through life politically ignorant.
You mentioned the lane lock. Here you go. Just
Oh, okay.
sitting on my
Right, the new Negro. I read
it
that when
right now.
I read that when I was in college.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
indeed.
yeah. The new Negro, very, 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 very powerful. Yeah, man. What's in the name? What's in the name? I mean, and we see Malcolm X's name honored like in Harlem, up there on 125th Street. It's Malcolm X and Adam Clayton Powell. It is the in Harlem is the intersection. I think it's great to have our intersection, King Boulevard, and Crenshaw, to be King
Right.
Boulevard and Malcolm X. So Malcolm X corridor. Okay, so this goes from where? So I know you asked us to be at Crenshaw and Obama. You see, we renamed that street. That's a beautiful thing.
Right. Right. So we're going to be at Obama and Crenshaw. We want to start somewhere. We don't have everything we want with this effort, meaning that we'd like to have a street sign at every corner from the 10 freeway all the way to Florence, or the border of Englewood. But because of political reasons and because of some economic reasons, we're not able to get all of that done. But we have much of what we want done, and so it's a start. You have to start somewhere.
Sure.
And you have to be proud of your accomplishments. And since it's taken me 30 years, I'm pretty proud of the accomplishment. And so we're going to start there to kick off and symbolize and theorize and talk about what's going to happen the rest of the day. So we'll just do a press conference there on Obama and Crenshaw. And we'll move from there to MLK and Crenshaw and put up a sign. Again, I want to give all praises and honor and thank yous to Councilwoman Heather Hutt. She's the one who went to the city council and said, this is something we need to do. But I also want to thank all of the neighborhood councils and all of the grassroots brothers and sisters and warriors on the street who signed a petition, who advocated for us and got behind us. And so it's the people, along with a politician who understood and was sensitive and was courageous enough to go in that city council and say, we need to do something for Malcolm X. So I'll always admire that woman as much as I admire, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who started me off. And so we're going to go from there. And then we go from MLK and Crenshaw at 10:30. And then we arrive at Florence and Crenshaw at 11:30. We put up another sign there, right? So now we have the corridor, right? The next move is to put up some artwork as we move along, right? And put up some writings and stuff like that. And maybe an institution. I want to open an independent educational institution for Black youth. That's one of the goals that I have, right? And I'll talk about that. But that's basically the action on the street that morning from 9 until 11:30, 12 o'clock. And then we come back to Leimert Park inside of the gated area to do our concert and program. Well, we have speeches, we'll have children's activities, we'll have poetry, and we have an organic fashion show organized and curated by my sister, Queen Nzinga. We have a tribute to Earth, Wind, and Fire, a tribute to Bobby Womack, a tribute to Aretha Franklin. It's going to be a great program, man. And, people definitely don't want to miss this. Right?
That's right. That's right. I think this is very, very awesome. It's so needed. And, what I'm reflecting on right now, Brother Torrey, is, the Crenshaw neighborhood is looking a little different these days, and so I think it's timely before we are completely outnumbered in that space. When we see the neighborhood changing, your boots on the ground in Leimert and everything. Like, how do you still maintain the essence, the quality, the impact of Black culture that has been there for many generations there? Now, it's changing, and I'm all for change, to be honest with you. And talking about what they would say gentrification is probably a whole nother show. But at the same time, folks are going to move where they want to move, and that's okay. This is America, right? But hold on one sec. Sorry about that. But it's important to first, I think, preserve culture that has resided in the region, that vibrates the life of the Crenshaw corridor. Or the Malcolm X corridor? Okay, I'll get my tongue used to saying that. The Malcolm X corridor. what are folks saying? What are folks doing? What's the vibe to preserve Black culture in that region?
Well, I have to say that the effort to have and now successfully have a Malcolm X corridor speaks into the conditions, the current reality, and contemporary situations that are happening right now in our community, where there are people, let's just say white people, who 20 years ago were not around. There are many reasons behind it. I don't want to just point the finger at them because I posed a question once, Greg, on Facebook. I asked, what is the worst enemy confronting Black people today? Is it white racism, white supremacy, or is it Black self-hatred? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have these two phenomenons simultaneously existing, and which one is wreaking the most havoc on Black folk?
Mm-hmm.
I would argue to say that it's Black self-hatred. That if you love yourself, if you're unified, if you're supportive of each other and take care of each other, you don't worry about what other people are doing, and they probably won't do it when they know that you're tight and you're unified and you got your act together. They'll only do it when they know they can exploit you. And so as we look at the changing demographic on Crenshaw, in the Crenshaw Leimert Park community, and as we look at also these edifices going up, I call them projects, these buildings that seem to be popping up everywhere. These are land grabs, right?
Everywhere.
Yeah, all these is entrepreneurs, Black and white, making money.
Yeah.
On the backs of the culture that the roots people created. People hear about Leimert Park because of people like Horace Tapscott, people like Billy Higgins, people like Kamal Daoud, the great poet, people like the White Triple, the vocalist. These people, I can name many more. Gerald Wilson, Dr. Art Davis, Richard Fulton, who opened the Fifth Street Dick's Coffee shop over there in Leimert Park years ago. These are the architects, of these cultural movements, these cultural nuggets that we enjoy today. Why do people come to Leimert Park every Saturday and Sunday, and want to listen to the drums and all of that, and music is universal. So I don't blame white folks or any other folks for wanting to be here in Leimert Park and Crenshaw. They love what we do. They don't want to be us, right? They don't want to suffer what we suffer because of who we are, but they want to enjoy the culture that we produce, because without Black culture, there is no American culture. Blues, jazz, country, yes, country, R&B, doo-wop, hip-hop, bebop, all of those art forms come from us, So we're so powerful in that way, but so weak in some ways that allow others to take advantage of what we've created. And that's what we have to stop doing. But we have to love ourselves enough to get those things done.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I mean, you named so many names that are the architects of the Leimert Park vibe, and I've been studying lately, Brother Torrey, the works of John Outerbridge and Noah Purifoy. I've been out with Joshua Tree a few times and walked among his outdoor museum and all of that, and just really reflecting on what catalysts for art these brothers and sisters are, and all emanating to and through the Leimert Park and even down to Watts Towers. That whole experience, the epicenter of Black arts and culture. Man, is really, really glad to hear you say their names, and wanted to encourage everybody who may come across this podcast to just think about their names and say their names and reflect on the goodness through arts and culture that these brothers and sisters have. I'm really glad to hear you mention Councilwoman Heather Hutt. And I've been knowing her also quite a long time. And one thing about it, the sister has always been about the community, I can't remember, but is Leimert Park in her district, or is it, is
Yes.
Vernon still the dividing line?
Yeah, it dividing line is right there at Vernon, Vernon. But this is Heather Hutt.
Okay.
Right on the north side of Leimert Park is Heather Hutt. And on the other side is Marquise Harris Dawson. That was done by what was his name? The former councilman. I'm forgetting his name. I'm sorry.
Oh, with you talking about Chief Parks?
It was when Chief Park was in.
Councilman. I remember that. Yes.
What's the other? He used to be the president of the city council. What was his name?
Herb Wesson.
Herb Wesson. Herb Wesson that did that. He didn't like Bernard Parks.
Yes, I remember that. Oh man, isn't that something? We always, that's an interesting point you just bring up, because we always look at city government and we think the brothers and sisters that are on there occupying the seats, the black folks occupying the seats, we're thinking, y'all rolling in solidarity, but no.
Nah, they had deep divisions going on, brother.
Yes. Wow.
I know Brother Mark Ridley Thomas very well. Been knowing him for years. I can pull out some photos of things that we've done in the past and everything. I know some black people who admire him and some who can't stand him.
Right.
And that's just the way it is, man. And when you know what your assignment is in life, you just have to do it and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, when I was at KJLH, Chief Parks was one of my closest allies in the things that I was doing. And so we actually did the first Martin Luther King Day Festival out there. That was created a conversation between me and him about what happens after the parade. And boom, there it was. And, I used to have KJLH out there very, very strong and working alongside Chief Parks. And it is that, and then the fireworks extravaganza that we would do in Exposition Park. It is there that I learned that our brothers and sisters in government don't always get along, because when Curran Price took office, he called and he wanted to know everything about the 4th of July celebration in Exposition Park. I went in the office and I spilled my beans, and then next thing I know, I look at the headlines and they were arguing and accusations are flying. And I'm like, dang, I went in there with blinders on. I thought that our black brothers and sisters in politics were unified, and no.
You had an entree into why we wound up enslaved.
Yes, sir. Yes. All right. So with the festival, name some of the just off the top of your head, who pops into mind, like the artists that will be performing on stage, the artists who will be displaying the art. Let's shout out the artist community.
Well, we don't rely on the big name artists to attract people to our event. We really believe in community artists. And so some of the names I named, you may not have even heard of. There's a fantastically gifted vocalist who he's actually from LA, but he lives in Las Vegas, and he's voted the top vocalist in Las Vegas for many years going. Travels the country. He'll be coming in from somewhere on the East Coast to come and do our festival. His name is William Jordan Jr. And he's doing a tribute to Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Nice.
And you will close your eyes and think that Philip Bailey is on that stage when you hear him.
Wow.
Every note that Philip ever hit, he hits, And so William Jordan will be there with us. And then we have two of the groups that I'm associated with, right? And so we have Street Corner Renaissance, which is a nationally known a cappella doo-wop group that travels the country and travels the world. Our group was the first group to bring doo-wop to Dubai. We did that.
Nice.
We were the first doo-wop group from Los Angeles to be on a hit TV show, the NBC TV show, The Sing Off, and did that back in 2015, somewhere around there. So we'll be there. And then I'll have one of the vocalists from I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the group, but he's doing a tribute to the Stylistics. I have another great vocalist, Anthony Sneed, doing a tribute to the Whispers. Now I have my daughter, Felicia Reese, who's a great vocalist, doing a tribute to Aretha and Shaka Khan. And then we have Larry Love, one of the great poetic voices in the city, bringing some of the greatest poets in the city to the stage. They want to do their thing. I mentioned the Organic African Fashion Show earlier. So yeah, man, I mean, when you come to the Malcolm X Festival, you're going to get 5-star entertainment. And of course, we'll have the dignitaries there I know our Congresswoman, Auntie Maxine, is going to be there, Heather Hutt, and many of the other political voices and other grassroots leadership voices will be there to make sure that we're aware and on track. I want to mention one thing, bro. As we talk about entertainment and everything, that's cool. We're also going to have a film series at Ben Caldwell's Chaos Network. He did an original film on Malcolm about the 40th anniversary of the OAAU, and so he's showing that film for the first time at I think at 1 o'clock on that Saturday, and then they're going to have a panel discussion about Malcolm's legacy after that, and then more films. But I want to send a shout out to Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso. I'm sure you've probably been keeping up with him and how critically important he is and his symbolic meaning to us right now of a strong, young, conscious, smart, intelligent, committed young African leader in the vein of Patrice Lumumba, and Thomas Sankara and others who preceded him. And of course, there are assassination attempts right now on his life because of the good work that he's doing in transforming his nation and transforming the consciousness of African people all around the world, and not just African people. He has many allies, including the president of Russia, who are in support of what he's doing. So I just want to mention that as we talk about Malcolm X, because Malcolm will be proud of this young brother. And so I want our people to get hip to who he is and what he's doing. And he can inspire us to do some things in our community right here that are independent, strong, and powerful, right? So all of these issues will be brought to the fore at the festival. I'm also going to issue a piece that I wrote that is an agenda for Black America. I think I have about 6 to 8 pages of an agenda that includes independent education, it includes entrepreneurship, it includes reparations, reconstruction, etc. In fact, it's called Reconstruction Project 2026.
Nice.
And, I'm going to introduce that at the press conference that morning. And
it's interesting. Yes, thank you for amplifying the name of Brother Torre over there in Burkina Faso. I think this is a story that we all must look at and really understand. We're getting fed the wrong perspective. Of course, that's what America does is twist the story around the narrative. But really what's going on in his country and in the region, indeed, is not just crazy military juntas taking over, but they are really shedding the shackles of colonialism by the French.
right.
And what folks don't know is, as a condition of their independence in the 60s, those countries that were colonized by the French were required to basically run their economies through the French bank. And last year, I think what you're seeing is in Niger, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, a few other countries, is them, like I said, shedding the shackles of colonialism. When they left the people in dire straits there, even pouring cement down in the sewers and all kinds of things that went on as the French exited that. But now over the years, they've allowed, the French have established military bases. They're very heavy in extracting the mineral resources out of the rich soil of Burkina Faso and other countries. And Brother Troy and many more are now saying, oh no, the young people are raising up. They're saying, no more, get out of here. We want to do for self. How, explain to us or teach us there, Professor, how the linkage between these acts of liberation that we're seeing and the words of Malcolm X connect. What is the intersection?
One of the things that is critically important about Malcolm X is that it's important to understand that for the last year, maybe year and a half of his life, much of that time was spent in Africa and in the Middle East. And when he went to Africa and the Middle East, of course, people know about, the personal transformation, the change that he went through with the racial attitude or outlook, the political outlook and attitude. But what he was showing us is that we are citizens of the world. Paul Robeson had said that many years before. Paul Robeson was someone who inspired Malcolm, not only in terms of traveling internationally, but in terms of a vocal delivery. If you listen to Malcolm and you listen to Paul Robeson, you will hear some similarities there. But you'll also see similarities in terms of their political ideology and consciousness. Mm-hmm. There's a mountain named after Paul Robeson and Russia, right?
Wow,
So
I didn't know that.
yeah, right. And so as we talk about Ibrahim Traore and what he's doing, the connection between him and Malcolm is the fact that, number one, the brother exists on the continent of Africa, and Africa is a continent which most people really don't understand. It's not a country; it's a continent
That's
with
right.
many countries consisting inside of that context. And so the fact that Ibrahim has already started negotiations or talks, I should say, with China, with Russia, and many other nations that are not under the foot of American imperialism and European imperialism shows points in the direction that Malcolm was going in. Malcolm was saying to us that we should not constrict our movement or restrict our movement to the geographical limitations of America. That's foolish. So he issued an 8-page memorandum to the United Nations charging America with human rights violations. And he said that human rights were above and beyond civil rights. And when people call him a civil rights leader, it pisses me off. He never said he was a civil rights leader. Of course, civil rights are a part of what we want, but human rights is what we have to have first. And so Traore is doing the same thing. He's making sure that women, for example, have equal rights in his country, just as Thomas Sankara, who was assassinated in 1987, did, right? He only had 4 years to do what he did. And so, and Traore has only been in since, I think, 2022. Mm-hmm. So he's only had about 3 years now and has already pricked the consciousness of human beings around this world. Mm-hmm. So the connection to Malcolm is strong and it's clear and it's direct and it's consistent. And we need to understand it. We need to get with it. There are many people from around the world now who want to go to Burkina Faso to get around that brother and protect him and make sure that he's not one of those statistics that we talk about so often, that he doesn't join Che Guevara and Maurice Bishop and all of the others who were assassinated before their time. And so I hope I'm answering your question and just saying that he is a continuation of the work and the legacy of Minister Malcolm, and even some of the Black Panthers, who understood that, they had to read Miles' Red Book to extract the philosophy that would work here in America in the context of the belly of the beast that we live in right here. And we have a cruel beast in office right now who we need to really understand who he is and what motivates him. And it's not just him, it's the environment, it's millions of people who think like him and support him and who prop him up. He's just a symbol of part of what America has always been about. And that's degradation, segregation, humiliation, and democracy, as Malcolm said, is hypocrisy most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You absolutely answered the question there. I mean, I think it's just important to have these lessons, and people, if they have an open mind and they realize that they need a sense of consciousness, it's important to explore these names that you and circumstances that you've just described. Now, let me ask you this question, right? Okay, among our people, maybe back in the day, some folks didn't really resonate with Brother Malcolm. Maybe Brother Malcolm's words were too harsh for some. I mean, we're not a monolith in community, right? It's like they listened to Malcolm, they listened to Martin, and they chose the more passive route with Brother Malcolm. I mean, with Brother Martin, as opposed to following the words of Malcolm X. They would say Malcolm is too harsh, too strong, too. Some would even venture to say, he's too violent. I wouldn't say that, but I mean that's how people interpret his words. But now, fast forward to now, those very same people are they're being forced to say, okay, you know what, maybe Brother Malcolm was right. What would you say to help older generations or people who were around when Malcolm was alive and now have had to admit and change their consciousness against today's backdrop? What would you say to help them along?
Older people of that generation have lived long enough to see the hypocrisy that this country espouses and has always espoused. And all Malcolm was doing was pointing out the truth. All he ever said was, we have the right to defend ourselves. If you're walking down the street with your wife and someone walks up to you two guys, and smacks your wife in the face, you're not going to turn the other cheek. You're going to knock the hell out of them. That's your human instinct. It's not that you're violent, it's that you're protecting yourself against violence. He never advocated for violence. In fact, there was more violence associated with Martin Luther King than Malcolm X. There was more bloodshed around Martin Luther King than Malcolm X. Now, at the end of the day, both of them wound up assassinated at the age of 39. Not one of those men lived to see the age of 40. And so that also further reveals the contradictions in this nation. No matter what you do, they see all of us as the same. If you're a Christian preacher, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Buddhist, a Taoist, or whatever you are, to them, you're still black. And it doesn't matter, because just the fact of being black puts you in a category that, it's just like the new Pope, right? This new Pope has African blood flowing through his veins. He's a Creole from New Orleans. Yeah, they say he's from Chicago, but look at his history. His people were from New Orleans 7th Ward, where I'm from. The free people of color in New Orleans.
Wow.
Essentially is a Negro, right? And he's going to be treated like a Negro the more he comes into the knowledge and of his background comes into the public fore. He's going to be treated like that. He's going to be thought of like that. Already, they're starting to criticize him for things that he said before he became Pope. And so it further supports the not the theory, but the reality that we live here in America. And so if you're going to criticize Malcolm X, you have to criticize Dr. King, because what Dr. King did was revolutionary, courageous. He lost his life talking about peace and love and togetherness and unity and harmony. But when he talked about it in relationship to the war in Vietnam, his life ended a year later. So, you're foolish to put one over the other and think that one was right and one was wrong. Both of them were right about certain things, and both of them were flawed in other areas. And so to continue that kind of foolishness reveals something about our own lack of political development. So
it's interesting. I have a Malcolm X T-shirt, and when I was in Ghana, one of the times I was in Ghana, I was wearing it, and man, when I tell you I was getting stopped on the street, and people, oh, Brother Malcolm, Brother Malcolm, Brother Malcolm. I mean, it was very, very, it was surprising for one, but it was intense, how many times I was getting, stopped on the street in recognition of my shirt. And it just goes to underscore for me the impact that Brother Malcolm had when he did travel to Africa. Tell us a little bit about that. He traveled to Africa, and he had a revelation, and that is, like you say, to be a global citizen. Talk about that a little bit and educate the folks on what really happened in that day and time.
In all honesty, in my view, Malcolm already was there, because Malcolm had traveled to Africa in 1959. What we're talking about is 1964. But in 1959, he was totally dedicated to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. Of course, he was the national spokesman for that organization. And so, it was of political interest to maintain that stance and that perspective of the world and of the political reality that we lived with here in America. In 1964, of course, he was in a different place in his professional career and his political career, because he had been kicked out of the Nation of Islam and had formed his own organizations and became independent of the Nation of Islam. And so when he went back to Africa and the Middle East this time, he had a different perspective, but he had that knowledge before, but now he had a reason to allow it to transform him personally, is what I'm saying. And so I hope I'm not forgetting your question, but.
No, that's it. We're just ruminating on what that was like, when he made his transformation.
Yeah, and so when he went back in 1964, he had a different public persona that was more, again, independent from, for lack of a better term, the confines of the Nation of Islam. And so as he traveled, he was treated as a head of state, because he had his own thing, and he, of course, had his own reputation, and he had a traditional Muslim name. And that allowed him to move through those Islamic nations with more ease. He was accepted in places maybe he would not have been accepted had he been just a card-carrying member of the Nation of Islam, if you can understand. And so as he, went about his business in 1964, he was offered opportunities to live and exist and work in African nations, in Middle Eastern nations. He was offered homes, palaces, money. He did not have to come back here to America and die. And he knew he would die if he came back to America. He knew that, right? But he felt an obligation, to complete his mission here in America. And he did that, and we need to thank that brother for consciously giving up his life for us, And the only thing that pains me, brother, is when I see foolish Negroes like Clarence Thomas and Candace Owens and this other Byron Donalds or whatever his name is, all of these sellouts, these house Negroes, who know better, but who have gone for the money behind the sacrifices on the blood of W.E.B. Du Bois, or the blood of James Baldwin, on the blood of Ida B. Wells and Harriet Tubman and Garvey and so many more that I can name, Toussaint Louverture, right? Martin Delaney. We, at some point, man, we have to, in some way, extradite them out of our community. I don't mean physically hurting anybody. I just mean consciously, emotionally, we got to put those people on the side, man, and do what we have to do.
Well, it's interesting, like you have Blacks for Trump and all of that, and they had I remember what comes to mind as you speak about this is like the picture I saw when I guess Trump gave them a party for Black History Month, and they were all up in the White House and everything, skinning and grinning,
Yeah.
I just can't for the life of me. You can vote for who you want to, right? And I mean, that's the thing about America. You can vote who you want to. It's your right. But at the same time, what I see online and what I saw when I watched the photographs and videos of the party that they had up in the White House, it's as if the people have, I guess I'm trying to say, they have no knowledge of self. They have no knowledge of our history, or they have a knowledge of our history and they just have chosen to, forget about it. They want equality, but when we talk about they want to be equal, they want to be included, and they believe that they have arrived and been included among those, white circles. But I want to talk about, Brother Malcolm. I remember in the autobiography of Malcolm X, when he went to Africa, he's talking about how he noticed how there were so many races involved in the religion of Islam, and he had no knowledge of that, right? He was just really sequestered to what, Nation of Islam had taught him and everything. And now he's a global citizen, and he sees white folks, brown folks, yellow folks, red folks, all different people participating in Islam. And, what's the message that we take from that, especially in these, I'm trying to make a dot of connectivity to this whole fight about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and them erasing our history and all of that. But Brother Malcolm spoke about equality for all. Human rights is what you said earlier. He's not a civil rights leader. He's a human rights leader. That's very, very important. And so why? Why is it so important now?
Well, without diversity, equity, and inclusion, you don't have peace in the world. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have to even talk about it is shameful. It's a shame on humanity. Malcolm and others like him were always aware and conscious of the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion, even though they didn't call it that back in those days. They just called it freedom and liberation and equality, right? Mm-hmm. And so, as we contemplate these themes, I would say, it gives these GOP, or as Republicans, MAGA people, and other foolish Negroes opportunities to create a narrative and create opportunities to advance themselves politically and to make money. And that's really all it's all about.
Yeah.
It really boils down to that, in my view, where these people are really advancing some kind of agenda to ultimately make money for themselves. The people who support them, the masses, are almost at the same level of Black folks who are, and others who are fighting for equality. In their eyes, they don't care about those, what we called in the South back in the day, we called them poor white trash. Mm-hmm. Trump gave a damn about them, and I think somewhere they know it. They want to be proud of being white, is what it is. And Tim Wise, one of the great scholars, who happens to be a white man, who happens to be an anti-racist, he talks to white folks about that. He tells them point blank, Elon Musk and Trump can give two damns about all of y'all white folks sitting in this audience right here, right now. Y'all know better than the Negroes that you think that they hate, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have more respect for those who stand up against them and speak out against this foolishness than they do for you. You know, they just use you to get their votes. That's all. You know? And so, yeah, I mean, you know, we can go on and on about that, man. But I just think that they changed the terminology. You know, it was affirmative action in the 1970s,
right?
And you know, and then it was something else later on. But I think at the end of the day, we have to look at our history, and let's talk about Reconstruction, which I love to talk about, the period after slavery in 1865, 1866, where Black folks were afforded the opportunity, only because of our struggle, of course, our fight, to own land, to own property, to go to school, to create our own Black townships, which we did in record numbers back in those days. And in the subsequent years when Jim Crow was, was biting at us, we formed our own Negro Baseball League, an entire league.
Yeah.
And today we don't own one team.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me about progress, all right? We owned our own league, brother, and now we don't own one team. So there's something wrong with that picture, right? And so, again, at the end of the day, the circle is complete, and the circle is going to always come back to us and what we're doing for ourselves, not what we expect somebody else to do. No politician is going to free you. No rich man is going to free you. We have to free ourselves, right? And we can do it. We have the power to do it. We have the money to do it. You just have to have the consciousness and the will and the love.
Yeah, and that consciousness, I think, has to be focused and turned. I think we spent a lot of time trying to assimilate into their culture, and then therefore the rewards of that for some have been, tremendous riches and everything. But now they're showing you that, no matter, like you said earlier, no matter how they look at you or how much money you got, whatever your status is, they still look at you one way, and you're still Black. Okay, that's what's up, But let's talk about transformation for a minute here. I mean, you mentioned a few names there, and I detect a little transformation in Candace Owens. Her rhetoric these days is a little different than what it used to be. Do you think maybe sister is getting an education and becoming more conscious, or what's going on? How do people achieve transformation?
No, I don't think she's transformed at all. I think transformation is possible in the heart of any human being. But as far as her, focusing on her, I don't trust her. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I ever will trust her, because she's very conscious of what she's done. And she's only transforming because of the way that the white people are treating her now. Her former employees, who fired her from her job and who are letting her know that, you're just a tool for us to use. Yes. There's a play out now called 44, the musical. It's a play about Barack Obama's career, right? And it's told from the perspective of Joe Biden. And that the characters in this play, and it's playing right now at the Kirk Douglas Theater.
Yeah, in Culver City.
In Culver City. And everybody should see that play. Yeah. It has the character Herman Cain. You remember Herman Cain, right?
I remember Herman, yes.
Right, and it shows the story of Candace Owens in there, how these white folks recruited him to be that one Negro that they needed to justify being diverse, right?
Wow.
But how they were always disrespecting him, how they were always showing him through their actions and words that they were simply using him for their own political gain. And that's the story of Candace Owens and Clarence Thomas and many of these other so-called, I don't know what they call themselves. But to me, they're pathetic human beings. We should never trust Candace Owens, and she should be deported.
Oh man.
I don't know where we're going to deport her to. I don't know who wants her.
Yeah.
But she cannot be trusted. She's. This is my opinion, And again, I believe in human transformation, but in terms of her and these others, no, they need to go somewhere else and do something else. They're not with us. They're not like us.
They're not like us. That's right. Hey, this has been a very fascinating discussion, and love to have you back to come and and chit chat with us more. I see we got a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack here, and I think this particular podcast will help people articulate and navigate their consciousness. And I hope that those who find themselves in shock and awe with what you're seeing happening in government and in the American society, I do see people, reconnecting with their culture, with our culture, because they see that, hey, you tried so hard to be like them, and you found out, like you just said, they're not like us. And so you're coming on back home, and as Brother Malcolm said, the chickens have come home to roost, right? And so as we depart from our coffee conversations here today, what would you like to share as a parting shot that we should know about the legacy and why we should honor Dr. Martin
Malcolm
Malcolm
X.
X? Yes.
Why we should honor Malcolm. Before I say answer that, I just want to really quickly plug everybody in the family organization, all of the board members, all of the committee members, Dr. K, Donna, Perky, Andre Parvenu, Queen Nzenga, Ina, all of the people that are with me. And our website is Family Soul. That's FAMLI, family, FAMLISOUL, soul.org. And people can go there and make donations to help us build this independent Black institution for youth. Why is it important to honor Malcolm X? Because as Ozzie Davis said in 1965, at the funeral of Minister Malcolm X, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, Omar Wali, in honoring Malcolm, we honor the best in ourselves. Malcolm said to us, of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. History is best qualified to reward our research. Oh, Dr. Johnny Rains and Brother Larry Love, I also want to shout out to them. And so with that in mind, we look back at what we've done in the past, what we've accomplished, what lessons were left for us. We stand on that and build on it. Don't forget your music. As a singer, I sing with the Delphonics. That's one of the groups I sing with. And when we're at the concerts, man, 99% of the people in the audience are Latino. And they cry and they go crazy, because they say, well, this is my culture. I grew up like this. My grandfather and my grandmother, had these records in the home, and they're living it, right? And we need to not let go of our culture, man. We need to not ever say anything is old school, or old school is okay, but don't say it's old and outdated. Don't say it's out of style. You're foolish, because other people, I'm not talking about the Latinos now, but UCLA and UCS, USC's and all these have courses on John Coltrane and Miles Davis and Billie Holiday and Sam Cooke. You dig what I'm saying? So let's keep our culture alive, man. Let's look to ourselves for the answers to the challenges confronting us today, and we'll be all right. Thank you, my brother. You're a legend, Greg Johnson.
Cut it out. Not me. You're the legend. Yes, thank you so much, Brother Torrence Brannon-Reece. He's making it all happen. There's so much more we could be talking about right now, but we're running out of time. We're about to invite him back for more Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You can get us on our Facebook pages, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You can get us on the website, Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. We're going to repurpose the audio for podcast purposes, and wherever you get your favorite podcast, we're right there. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Spotify, Spreaker, iTunes, man, just everywhere. Just type it in. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Celebrating the birth of Malcolm X and his life and legacy. May 17th, we'll be out there on Crenshaw and Obama Boulevard participating in the press conference. That's going to be at King and Crenshaw, and walking the walk with everybody as we identify, celebrate, and commemorate the Malcolm X corridor in South Los Angeles. That's all I got today. All I wanted you to know is that, hey, man, listen, love one another, love one another, love one another. Peace and blessings.